When I was growing up, we would get out of the car at church after a very long car ride. And I want to be clear, it didn't take us long, but the ride took forever. We had 3 kids in the back seat fighting, parents fighting in the front seat. We would get out of the car. My mom would straighten up my sister's smocked dress. And then through her gritted teeth, she would say, "Now you act like you love each other when we walk into this church." I call that the happy Christian face. We feel like when we show up to church, we have to fake it. I want you to know clearly today, you don't have to fake it here. Jesus' love has no if. Your life doesn't have to be put together. It doesn't have to be in order. You don't have to get it right. You are loved and you are welcomed in this place. We're going to wrap up our Welcome-ish series today, and I'm so glad you're here for that part of our conversation. If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Owen, one of the pastors here at Fuquay-Varina United Methodist Church, and I'm glad we're worshiping together here at the Recap. We have created this space just for you so that wherever you are, whatever you're up against in this week, in this moment, you can carve out a little slice of your day to have some worship. And so bravo to you for taking that opportunity. If you were not with us in worship, you missed a couple of things. One, we continue to celebrate our 25th anniversary. It's been a little rainy last few days, but we've got all the stuff up around the church. If you want to come take the prayer walk, we'd love to invite you to come and do that. We had new members class on Sunday. You can go to that link and always sign up for the next available class if that's something that you look for. We had handbells back this week. And then lastly, we offered an update on our Revise, Refresh, Renew campaign. We're going to put that update for you after the benediction. So you have to stick around for that at the very end if you want to see it. Other than that, if there's ever anything we can do to help you get connected around here, please text the number that's at the bottom of your screen. We'd love a chance to get back in touch with you. Or you can go to our website, FVUMC.org, and there you can find all sorts of ways to get connected and figure out what it looks like to be a part of our family here at Fuquay-Varina United Methodist Church. While you're there, if this is a place that you worship regularly or it's a meaningful part of your week, we'd encourage you to click on the button that says Give at the top right-hand corner, and you can help support the mission and the ministry that make this moment possible. I invite you all now to take a deep breath as we enter into worship together.
Sometimes on this journey, I get lost in my mistakes. What looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. And my story isn't over, my story's just begun. Failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does.
Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Oh yes, oh the Father's house. Come on home, come on home. Prodigals come home, the helpless find hope. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Prison doors swing wide, the dead come to life. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house.
Well, welcome to our third week of Welcome-ish, third and final week. And I'd like to start off by just saying this is not my first attempt to record this sermon. It started at like 45 minutes. We're slowly working our way down to 27. I feel like if I just admit to you that I'm leaving some stuff out that I really didn't want to leave out, I'll feel better about it. And maybe I can save you an extra hour of your life by not making you listen to all of it. But I would encourage you to go back and check out the previous 2 weeks. We talked the first week about how to avoid becoming an unintentional bouncer to the love of God. Last week, we talked about how to avoid, as a church, offering a welcome that people have to work for. Today, we're going to talk about how Jesus' love has no if. And I'm really glad you're here for this. I've been really wanting to do this series. I probably should have given it more weeks than just 3. I tried to shoehorn it in here in the fall because I think the timing of it is good. If you haven't been with us the previous weeks, basically I saw a sign on the front door of a house that said welcome-ish. Depends who you are and how long you plan to stay. And I thought, well, that's funny. That's real funny. But the more I thought about it, kind of passed it every day, taking my kids to school, the more I realized that while it's a funny sign on the front door of a house, it's a really brutal sign on the front door of a church. At this church, you're welcome-ish. It depends who you are and how long you plan to stay. So we've been asking the question throughout the whole series, what does the actual sign on the front door of our church say? I mean, it says welcome, but what does it actually say when people experience the welcome that we have to offer? And I hope this is a question, even after today, that we can go on wrestling with. Each week I've been sharing some kind of categories of comments from research that I did on Reddit, trying to understand what welcome-ish looks like, what it feels like to be welcomed-ish at churches all around the United States. 3 I want to share with you today. The first comes from a woman who is a part of the LGBTQIA plus community, and she indicated that she was not at all welcomed by a church that she attended. Cue internet rage. Everyone got their flamethrowers out, and in the comments beneath it, everyone's just burning everything to the ground. In both directions, both sides, everybody just... The original poster came back on and asked people to stop. And she said, "This is not who we are as the people of God." She said, "I'd like to respect their boundaries. I don't want to make them any more uncomfortable than I want them to make me uncomfortable. I'm just looking for a different church." And I love that comment for 2 reasons. One, just the grace that she showed up with in that moment is a Christ-likeness, a masterclass in how to handle oneself. And I feel like I learned a lot by watching her in that moment. And then secondly, I thought about something that I don't know I've ever thought about before. And shame on me for not having thought about it. Maybe you have. But I think a lot about what kind of church I might like to go to if I weren't employed by one I was required to be at. Is this a church that I would choose to go to? I certainly hope so. I want to lead like that in the church. But whenever I'm thinking about that, I'm always thinking about all these other churches and deciding if I want to belong to that church. I don't know that I've ever once asked the question what it would feel like to not have a church want me to belong. You see what I'm saying? It's interesting, just put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and I feel like the grace that she showed up with really allowed me to do that in a way I hadn't before. Second category would be parents looking for churches, but not just for themselves. The quote that I pulled out said, "My daughter will not darken the door of a church, but we are looking to worship somewhere that if she ever decided to come back, she would be able to come with us." This is actually not an uncommon one I hear around here. Grandparents worshiping in a church where they want to be able to bring their kids and their grandkids. So I think that's a common experience around here. And then the third was a woman. I recognize that all 3 of these are female-centric, not intentional, just the way it turned out. She was in the middle of a divorce and talked about just reaching such a low point that she wanted to find a place that she could go and reconnect with God. She hadn't been to church in a long time, but felt like that was a place in that part of her life that she needed to be. So she found a church. She said she sat in the back, and she said, "I promise I was," quote, "weeping as quietly as I could." And she says, "And I was asked to step outside by someone so as not to diminish the holy atmosphere in worship." These folks were welcomed-ish. None of these churches probably were trying to be unwelcoming. We quoted from Smith Wigglesworth the first week that we tend to judge other people by their actions, but ourselves by our intentions. I'm sure these churches intended to be radically welcoming. It's just that their actions didn't necessarily show up in that way. Their welcome, their love was contingent on something else. But I want to be real clear together today that Jesus' love for us is not a contingent type of love. Jesus' love for us has no if. Period. Full stop. What was at stake for Jesus was to clear every obstacle, every hurdle, everything that came between us and God, even sin and death itself. And at the center of that work was this radical extension of grace that Jesus offered to people during his ministry, what we call an uncommon welcome. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that Jesus didn't challenge people. I'm not saying that Jesus didn't have high expectations of people. I'm not saying that Jesus didn't insist that folks take off their old self, their old practices, their old ways, and take on the way of Jesus, a way that leads to life and life eternal, wholeness, fullness. I'm not saying that that is true and awesome and wonderful, beautiful. What I am saying is that Jesus' love wasn't contingent on people's ability to do that. And Jesus' love didn't stop when people walked away with heavy hearts because the teaching was too hard. We see that over and over again in the stories of Jesus. Here's how Jesus says it in a section of scripture where we're talking about kind of the requirements from the religious elites that get heaped on top of people. Jesus stands out differently in the midst of that when he says, "Come to me, all. Come, just come. Come to me, all who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." Then he uses disciple rabbi language. He says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." This is Jesus' invitation. Just come. Jesus' love has no if. And hopefully, as churches representing the love of Jesus to the world, our welcome has no if as well. No if and no ish. I'm not going to say anything different today than I haven't said in other places and other times. So none of this feels like it's going to be groundbreaking, but I want to put it kind of in the context of these implicit ifs that sometimes the church has in their welcome statements. Again, not explicit, not always intentional, but these implicit ifs. Here's the implicit if number one. You are welcome if you follow all the rules, right? Of course, like we do, like I do, the people like, good church folk. You're welcome if you can follow all the rules that we are also following. Maybe you've heard me talk before about wells and fences. Ranchers in Australia don't build fences. It's a lot of effort and energy, time and resources on fences. Instead, they dig wells. They say that the cattle may wander and stray, but they never move too far away from the well, which is their source of life. I love this metaphor for the church because I think in the church we spend an inordinate amount of time focusing on fences, where to build them, making sure they're in the right place, tending them so nobody can get out, nobody can get in. We spend a lot of time building fences at the expense of digging wells and offering the life-giving water that Jesus came to offer, the water of life, to those who are thirsty. When we focus on fences, we run into a couple of problems. The first is, even if we're not intending to, whenever we focus on a fence, we're erecting a hurdle or a barrier for someone to get to the well that's on the inside of that fence. Now, what we know is that if people were really thirsty, they'll eventually come close enough to the well. They'll be inside the place where the fence is. But the more we focus on building and tending those fences, the more we say to those who feel that they are outside of the fence that we've put up, that they don't belong. It's a hurdle or a barrier to them getting to the water. It's also a problem for us on the inside. For those of us on the inside, once we're inside the fence, sometimes we're just really happy to be there. Now, I don't say that any of us are attempting to be self-righteous in any sort of way. Ephesians chapter 2, it says, "For grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing." You didn't do it. It's the gift of God. You can't earn it or deserve it. This gift of grace is God's gift for you. It is not the result, Paul says it again, not the result of works, not the result of anything you've done. Therefore, no one can boast. But sometimes when we build a fence and we find ourselves on the inside of it, we're not going to build a fence, of course, that we're not on the inside of. It makes us feel pretty good about the world. It makes us feel comfortable and safe and secure inside that fence. But when we focus on the fences and who's in and who's out, we, on the inside of the fence, sometimes stop drinking from the well offered to us by the Lord of the church, who says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, all of you who are thirsty, and I will give you the water that you need to sustain your souls. This is like at the bait and switch. You're welcome if. I see this happen in churches a lot. Hopefully that's not the case here. These wells and fences, friends, are metaphorical, but they are not hypothetical. It would break your heart to know how many times we as pastors every year respond to emails and voicemails that people send before they come to our church for the first time, asking the question, am I allowed to come to your church? Not will I be welcomed, but am I allowed? Implicit if number 2 is you are welcome if you look the part. We've convinced ourselves that looking the part is an indication that we are a faithful person, that if we're faithful, our life will be good. I call this the happy Christian face. It's the idea that like our life is falling apart in the parking lot, but as soon as we walk through the front door of the church, we just smile as if everything in the world is perfect. Look at our family. It's great in every sort of way. And we're just hiding the mess that exists inside of our homes, inside of our families, inside of our lives. Jesus' love is not contingent on our ability to get our junk together before we come. And when we come to worship, hopefully we can come as our full selves, our whole selves, our actual selves. I live an actual life. You live an actual life. And our actual lives are beautiful and they are brutal. They're messy all the time. Work, family, kids, wanting to have kids and not being able to, coming with grief or fear or anxiety. Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest. Jesus' love is not contingent on us being able to get those things in order before we come. I go back to the lady's comment where she said, I promise you I was weeping as quietly I could in the back. And someone said that I needed to leave so as to not interrupt the holy atmosphere of worship. I can guarantee you her tears were the holiest thing that were happening in that sanctuary at that moment. When we bring our full selves, our heavy, laden, beaten down, weary, messy lived selves, when we bring our whole selves to worship, that honors God. When we come in with the happy Christian face on like we have to fake it with each other, not only do we build a barrier between us and one another, we build a barrier between us and God. And Jesus came to take away every barrier, every hurdle, everything that comes between us and God, even sin and death, to offer us this uncommon welcome. Implicit if number 3 is a little trickier, and I don't have a great way of saying it. I've been fishing for one. I admitted that a few weeks ago. This is new. This is me trying to figure things out in real time. So take it as it comes. It is my opinion. It is not coming from the Bible. It is my attempt at some cultural exegesis. I feel as though these days people feel like they don't belong or unwelcomed or are unwelcomed if they disagree. Implicit if number 3. You are welcome if you agree with me or with us, politically or theologically. There was a day and time, even in my life, now I sound like an old man, there was a day and time where we absolutely could disagree with each other out loud and publicly and vociferously, right? But we could go on being friends and neighbors and worshiping together in a church and serving side by side at the Kiwanis Club or whatever. Like, we were okay to disagree with each other. And now, it's not really okay to disagree with each other publicly. And if we do, we feel like we can't be friends, or we can't live together as neighbors, or we can't worship together in the same church. And that's a real challenge. I actually have heard this a lot around here. Folks who feel like their beliefs maybe are different than their friends, or their perception of those who worship around them and what they believe. And they're starting to say that they feel like they are unwelcome in this place. And this is not a unique experience to church. I think this is a cultural moment that we're in. It's been pretty well defined, I think, sociologically, that we have moved as a culture in America, in the West, from a time of like aberrant convergence, where we find our identity and our strength in being like everybody else. And particularly through the 90s and into the 2000s, we have moved into a time of divergent cultural identity, where we are actually find our identity and our belonging not by attempting to look like everybody else, but by attempting to look different. And so, as I've said pretty regularly, we cut ourselves up into smaller and smaller slices of the pie. And we find in those small slices of the pie where we exist, like we find our people. that act like us, that look like us, that think like us, and we really are comforted to be in that space. Now, I think that there's something beautiful about a little bit of divergence. That is that in this time, we really have come to appreciate that everybody comes with different experiences. They were maybe raised in different places or in different ways. They have different gifts, and that our differences are actually a gift to the whole. Like we benefit the whole by bringing kind of the unique qualities that each of us bring. That's awesome. The shadow side to that is when we start to define ourselves, like find our identity in the people with whom we belong in that very small and smaller still slice of the pie, we stop seeing our identity as rooted in our Creator. We stop seeing ourselves as children of God and as a part of the family of God, and we start seeing ourselves as finding our identity like in that little small sliver of the pie. And so, when someone disagrees with us, it is as if they are questioning our very identity, right? If they're in a different slice of the pie, they see and understand the world or God so differently than I do that those like ideas, they cannot coexist. This isn't just polarization, which we talked a lot about in the Daniel series. You can go back and check it out from this past summer. But I heard someone differentiate between polarization and fractioning. Here's the thing. The family of God has always been made up of people who have no other right or reason to belong together. Jesus' disciples had tax collectors and zealots, people on opposite ends of the political spectrum of their day. The New Testament church, Jews and Gentiles were eating together across religious barriers. Barbarians and Scythians across, geographical and cultural, national barriers. Like people that didn't belong together were sitting at the table eating together, and they were different. And they were different. They were not the same. They didn't have to pretend to be like each other, but they were one. They were one. And Paul says that it's the Spirit of God that made that oneness possible. Again, oneness and sameness are two different things. But Paul says it was the Spirit of God that allows that to happen and moves us towards the unity of faith. And I think that that's what this moment needs from the church. Now, that is my opinion and perspective. I am very happy for you to disagree with me on that. This is my best attempt to understand and explain where we are. I don't even have any solutions. I just think it's where we are, and I think it's problematic if we start finding our identity by saying, I am this type of Christian or that type of Christian, rather than I am a child of God and we are a part of the family of God. I understand having theological differences. I am not a Presbyterian. I made that choice very intentionally, but I don't run into a Presbyterian and think, oh gosh, that person's not a Christian. They highlight the sovereignty of God a little bit more. I highlight human agency a little bit more. We disagree, but I don't think that they're unfaithful or that we can't be good neighbors with each other. Like, we can have differences, but we can still belong to the family of God together, even if we're not necessarily worshiping the same church. Like, I don't even think that's necessarily a problem. It's just the way that we feel like we don't belong, can't belong, and are unwelcomed by each other when we disagree with one another. Fuquay-Varina United Methodist Church is a very multi-church. We've got some predominant qualities or characteristics, no doubt, but we are a very multi-church. So we're in the South, the southern part of the United States geographically, but we are a multi-geographical church. On a Sunday morning, if I ask people to raise their hand and say, are you a northerner? Like half the hands are going to go up, right? We're multi-geographical. We're multi-denominational. We're Methodist. We're not non-denominational, and proudly so. Cue the next sermon series coming up next week. But if I were to raise your hand and say, all the Baptists raise your hand, so many hands would go up. All the Catholics raise your hand, so many hands would go up. We're a multi-denominational church. Like, we approach theology from very different perspectives as a church. We have some predominant characteristics, but we are multi-generational. We are multiracial. We are multi-political. And I think that the family of God is a multi-family. And when we can honor and reflect the multi-ness of who we are, I think it not only honors God, I think it is pleasing to God, and it reflects the kingdom of God in our little corner of the world. Jesus says, come to me, all of you who are weary. That's going to pull together a lot of different kinds of people, and honestly, maybe some of the wrong kinds of people. But Jesus invites us to come and to drink from the well. Jesus' invitation to us Come to me, all of you who are heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Come as you are, without that happy Christian face on. Come because you're already loved. It's not a love you have to earn, but we'll get you healed up. Come towards, because there's not a wall or a fence that you're on the wrong side of. As long as you're moving closer and closer to the well, that's what matters. And if that's Jesus' invitation to us, then my prayer is that our invitation to the world is to say, come and have a seat next to me at the table of grace.
Here is where I lay it down, every burden, every crown. This is my surrender.
This is my surrender.
Here is where I lay it down, every lie and every doubt. This is my surrender.
And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to.
Shake up the ground of all my tradition, break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Your way is better.
Shake up the ground of all my tradition, break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. Here is where I lay it down. You are all I'm chasing now. This is my surrender. This is my surrender.
Again, it's been great to be together with you in worship today, these past few weeks. I know that I've offered a lot more questions than I have answers or solutions. And can we just say that that was intentional? Is that a thing we can say? I hope these are questions that we don't stop wrestling with, but that we go on asking them. And not just questions about how the church can do a better job of being welcoming, but what it looks like for each one of us to offer an uncommon welcome to people in the places that we live, work, and play. To give people, to lower an access or a barrier, to give people a pathway to the life-giving water of Jesus, the radical love that God comes to offer in the grace of Jesus Christ. That's our work for this week. We go out to do it, not alone, but in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, empowered to be the people that God has created and is calling us to be. So blessings on you as you go out to do that work, as we wrestle with these questions together. It's been great to be together with you today. And if you're interested in hearing that R3 update, just know it's coming in 1 second. Go in peace, and we will see you right back here next week.
Hello, FVUMC family. We wanted to share a quick update with everybody about our Revise, Refresh, Renew campaign, R3 for short.
Yeah, short is a good word. I've been saying around here that we are on the short rows, which, I mean, I grew up in Raleigh, so I don't really know. But I understand that short rows are the tiny rows next to the house, so the closer you get to the end of the day, when you're almost done, you get to the short rows. And that's, I think, right where we are. We had 11 projects when we started. As of this fall, technically, 4 are done, 2 are underway, and then 5 remain in planning stages. But to me, and we'll make the case here, I think we really only have 4 left to go. Can we just run through the projects real quickly so folks remember?
Project number 1 is the multi-use room at the end of the adult wing. I know a lot of you are wondering about the timeline for finishing renovations to create this space. It's going to be used for worship, classes, gathering, and other ministry. The holdup on that room being completed is a supply chain issue. We're waiting on a custom fire-rated glass door to complete the space, and the door is all we have left.
And then we are done. Just the door. Some of you know, if you peeked in there, you know who you are. You know it's almost done. So excited there. Project 2 is the family bathroom. That's complete, not just a bathroom. It really has already made it possible for folks who haven't been able to participate in ministry to be able to do that. I'll skip ahead and go out of order. Project 6, same thing, also done. That's the ramp up to the Centrum platform. Folks with limited mobility have been able to help lead worship. It's been a beautiful thing.
And if your family is going to make use of that changing table, there's a brief training session we want you to go through. Just email info@FVUMC.org and we'll get that scheduled.
Great. Project 3 is done. That's the children multi-use Camp Quay Kids is what we're calling it. Project 4 is the work in the Centrum. So the speakers are done, the projector is done. We've got the screen still has to go up, and then we've got a couple of lights in the lobby. All the guts of those lights are 25 years old. They're being replaced, but that also is underway.
And then Project 5 is the parking lot and sidewalk renovations. The trustees are just about ready to press play on that work. We'll be sure to let everyone know as soon as we have a schedule for that, and we anticipate that happening by the end of the year.
Yeah, and then
Project 11 is the new roof. Yeah, so we installed that last fall, and with all the weather and hurricanes around
just
here.
in the nick of time.
Yeah, now we've got something to project all that fancy AV equipment.
There you go. Okay, so those are the projects that I'm going to call done-ish. All right, so they're not all fully complete, but we're just kind of wrapping those up, which means that what we have left is Project 7, 8, 9, 10. 7 is the replacement of carpet and flooring throughout the building. 8 is the Centrum chairs.
Right.
God bless them. We'll let them retire. 25 years of ministry is good. Project 9 is the replacement of the playground equipment, which is also original to the building, or most of it. And then Project 10 is some canvas-covered accesses on the side entrances and the backs as well. So we'll talk more about those later, but that's kind of what we have left to wrap up. Where are we financially?
So as everyone may be aware, we developed the R3 campaign as a pay-as-you-go model. And so we've been able to cut some of the anticipated costs for R3 by combining multiple projects together, which is great news. As of today, if we combine everything that's been pledged with what's been promised, we've got about $1 million of funds that we can expect. And that's a big and exciting number. It also means that all we have left is roughly another $250,000 to wrap up these projects.
Yeah, in order to meet our goal. Honestly, when we started, I thought $1 million was a big number, and it's super exciting that we've done that. We can do hard things together, y'all. We can do it. I really want to say a special word of thank you to the 238 households who have partnered with us to make that work possible. It's not just that I or that we are grateful, like your whole church family is deeply grateful for your generosity, your over and above giving. So thank you so much for that. If you've been waiting for an opportunity to participate, now is the time. I think we were hopeful to wrap everything up by 24. We might not get there by construction, but I think we can get there through our capital campaign.
And so if you want to make a one-time gift or start recurring gifts, you can do that using the online form at FVUMC.org/give, or you can write a check and put R3 in the memo line. Also, if you're interested in contributing appreciated stock or making gifts from retirement plans or things like that, I can chat with you more about that. You can email me directly at executivedirector@FVUMC.org if you'd like to initiate that discussion.
Yeah, Chris is great at that stuff. You should reach out if you got questions. Thank you for being patient. My patience has run out, so maybe some of you are still patient, but we're almost there. We're in the short rows. We're so close for getting this thing done.
Short rows.
Yeah, short rows. Very excited. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.